I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and the murder trial for his alleged killer, Karen Reed. This case has a lot of witnesses, including police and experts. For prosecutors to win, their credibility is crucial. Here's the story. In the pre-dawn hours of a snowy January morning in 2022, the lifeless body of Boston police officer John O'Keefe was discovered face up in the front yard of 34 Fairview Road in Canton, Massachusetts. A dedicated cop and beloved uncle, John O'Keefe's sudden violent death sent shockwaves through the community. His girlfriend, Karen Reed, a finance professor, was quickly cast from grieving partner to accused killer. Prosecutors claim she dropped him off at the home of a fellow officer after a night of drinking, then struck him with her SUV while backing up and left him to die in the cold. They point to broken taillight fragments, a cracked rear light on her vehicle, and chilling voicemails she left that night. But Reed's defense tells a different, darker story of a brutal beating inside that house, a cover-up, and a law enforcement conspiracy to frame her. As the courtroom drama unfolds, the battle for the truth continues as the jury must weigh the credibility of each witness to figure out what happened. Credibility, so important. I'm a former prosecutor, and as a prosecutor, you put your witnesses up on the stand. You know the evidence that they're going to testify about. You know the pieces of evidence that they're going to show the jury. But what you don't know is if the jury is going to believe them. That's where credibility comes into play, and it's everything. It applies to police witnesses, it applies to experts, it applies to regular witnesses. What they say is important, but only if the jury believes them. And that's what we're going to do this hour. We're going to take a look at some important witnesses and look and see if there are any signs of deception here. One of the first witness we're going to look at, Sergeant Yuri Bukhenik. Take a listen.
Can you describe for the jurors exactly where each of the, let's take them one at a time, where each of the 6 pieces of plastic fragments were found?
All items recovered that day were found in the general vicinity where the other items were also located. The area had been excavated. I've been to that location several times, and it was all located in the general vicinity where it was initially excavated, but also where I was told Mr. John O'Keefe was found on the morning of January 29th, 2022.
So, other than saying in the general vicinity, did you seek to actually document where each item was found? In other words, by cross coordinates or some other such manner?
The exact location where each item was recovered from was not documented with a picture or GPS location.
Okay. Significant witness, one of the lead investigators, right? The lead investigator hasn't testified, but one of the lead investigators. And that brings us to the first question in our investigation. Is Yuri Bukhenik showing any signs of deception? Is there anything about his testimony, the way he says what he says, his body language, showing any signs of deception? Helping us to answer that question, body language expert Janine Driver. She's also the host of the podcast In the Driver's Seat with Janine Driver, and behavioral and social scientist Dr. Abby Mar-Ono. Great to have you both here. Appreciate it. Let's do this. I'm going to show you a little bit more of Sergeant Bukhenik's testimony, and then I'll come out to you and ask you the question if you're seeing any signs of deception here. Let's take a look.
Do you believe that Michael Proctor, his involvement in this case, taints the investigation? Tainted the investigation?
No.
Not at all?
The investigation was done with honor, integrity, and all the evidence pointed in one direction only.
Honor and integrity by Michael Proctor?
Was that a question? I'm sorry.
Sure is. Everything I say is questioned. Honor and integrity by Michael Proctor, Sergeant. Objection.
Sustained to the comment.
All right, Janine Driver, what are you seeing from the sergeant?
Well, first of all, retired law enforcement here, we know in law enforcement the strongest denials are no, not absolutely not, or of course not, or of course, of one way direction or the other. So a no is always the strongest denial. So if we start with that, it's a strong denial. Probably not the best move to add a little shoulder shrug, and he came at us a little bit, which in my world we call this advancing. You see him get a little bit bigger as he's giving his answer, and he's not doing that. So some people might say, well, he's answering the question, he's going close to the mic. Okay, he doesn't do that in every single question. So here he gets a little bit bigger, and in my world we say, Vinnie, you know, truthful people convey, liars try to convince. So we have a verbal strong denial, but some body language that I think might kind of change the answer a little bit, especially this little shoulder shrug that happens, which is uncertainty.
All right, Dr. Morano, what are you seeing with Sergeant Bukhenik here?
Yeah, well, it's important to take both the nonverbal and verbal together because you want to look for inconsistencies between the two channels. And he does show some signs of discomfort, which can be an indicator of deception, like he has a very strong lip compression. But what I'm actually seeing from him is more defensiveness, like that strong no is a great way to start because we tend to avoid direct no's or yeses when we want to kind of move around the answer. But that strong no with the lip compression, I'm seeing more frustration with him. He is a little defensive and he's also very stiff during key questioning. So he's likely to be showing a lot of self-monitoring behavior. So he's obviously in tension. And I would say more defensiveness than stress you can see on his behavior.
Okay, I've got another important moment of his testimony. Again, this is cross-examination, so it's adversarial by nature. We know that, and we know how good Alan Jackson is. We've been watching him for years here on Court TV. Let's take a look.
It was a member of the Massachusetts State Police assigned to our office. It wasn't just a random person. I can't specifically identify who it was or who wrote on that bag. I know it was a trusted member of our unit and part of the investigative team.
How do you know it was a trusted member of your unit and a part of the investigative team if you can't tell these jurors who it was? How do you know that?
Because I wouldn't have turned it over to a random stranger.
Okay, so let's figure out the possibilities. Do you remember turning it over to Trooper Dunn?
No.
You remember turning it over to Trooper Pikowski?
No.
Do you remember turning it over to Trooper DeChico?
No.
Do you remember turning it over to Michael Proctor?
No.
So it might have been just a random stranger. Right?
That's a ridiculous suggestion.
It was contentious in there, right? This is cross-examination. Janine, what are you seeing?
The big thing here is these tongue protrusions, and we see them throughout a couple different parts of the testimony. There's another part talking about this group text and who's the miscellaneous number that's in there. You know, was that Michael Proctor? And he says yes. And we see this tongue protrusion here as well, and as he's testifying. A tongue protrusion, Vinnie, is a couple things. Number one, it could be subtle pleasure in someone manipulating us. It could be, I don't want to reveal too much, so you'll get that tongue sticking out of the mouth. Or deep concentration. So if you imagine threading a needle back in home ec, remember, well, I don't know, I'm 54, I don't know your age, you're probably younger than me, Vinnie, but threading a needle in home ec back in the day, you'd stick out your tongue with deep concentration to get that thread through the needle, the eye of the needle. I don't think it's deep concentration. So is it subtle pleasure in manipulating us? Is it he doesn't want to reveal too much? I think it might be not wanting to reveal too much. But here's the deal with body language, Vinnie, and you at home. We don't know what the catalyst is. You know, the doctor and I can weigh in and we can give you our opinion. At the end of the day, we don't know what the catalyst is, but for sure that tongue protrusion for me is a biggie. It doesn't belong there. It's in the moments where are the special parts of the testimony that we're all cued into. That's where the tongue protrusions are coming out.
All right, and I'm not going to tell you if I'm older or younger, because if I do, you'll analyze me and figure out whether or not I'm telling the truth. All right, Dr. Morano, what are your thoughts about this second piece of this very intense cross-examination?
Yeah, I love the comment about the behavior doesn't fit, because that's what we look for. We look for behaviors that are not expected within that context, because we would expect some degree of discomfort and stress. Anyone in that situation is going to show some degree, but we look for things that are above the norm and things that are inconsistent. And not only we see the tongue protrusion, but we also see a slight smile. So there's almost a smirk during quite a serious topic, and often that trying to conceal a smirk or a smile as it comes out is a leakage of contempt. And what I see as well is when he is speaking, he's putting a lot of emphasis on the final letters. And what that can be is an attempt to restrain anger. And again, that lip compression, it could be him trying to withhold information. Often we kind of pull our lips together as if to keep the information behind our lips. But it can also be when we're feeling anger, we have a tightening of the jaw and a compression of the lips. And the way he's emphasizing his words, it's almost like he's throwing them. So I see some attempt to conceal anger there.
Yeah, I would agree with the anger. There's definitely anger. Knowing the history of this case, the history of everything that has happened here, I think anger is right on. Okay, Janine Driver, Dr. Morono, going to stay with us. Coming up next, one of the experts, is Shanon Burgess showing any signs of deception?
A Bachelor of General Science in Mathematics and Business Administration does not exist as an offered degree at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, does it?
Sure, so that is an error.
It was the biggest story in the world.
People saw the facts differently.
Somebody manufactured evidence in this case.
This was kind of a crazy spectacle.
This case is a circus.
He was an icon.
They are in for the fight of their lives.
Everybody thinks you're guilty.
Trial and error. Why did O.J. win? Marathon begins Saturday morning, 9/8 Central. Only on Court TV.
It is 12:32:16, and Your Honor may recall that the seconds, literally seconds, matter in the analysis of many factors.
There's Robert Alessi, one of the defense attorneys for Karen Reed, talking about how seconds matter in this case. And this trial and the prosecution in this trial has really focused a lot on the digital timeline being established by the Lexus, by the phones, by the Apple Health data in putting together what they believe happened. Since there was no eyewitness who saw the murder, they're trying to prove it through this digital timeline. And one of the key witnesses that the jury has to believe for prosecutors to win this issue and win this trial is Shanon Burgess, an expert who testified. Take a listen.
Are you aware that all of the relevant events in the timeline you described in your presentation in these slides actually occurred on January 29th, 2022, not January 30th, 2022. Do you know that?
This is January 30th, 2022.
That's
It's January 29th, correct.
It's January 29th.
Okay, so the expert who was in charge of putting that timeline together did the times the way prosecutors needed it done, but got the day wrong. So correcting that there. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. It's about this expert, a really important expert. Is Shanon Burgess showing any signs of deception? Let's bring back in our guests helping us in our investigation, Janine Driver and Dr. Abby Morono. Okay, same routine here. We're going to do it the same way. I'm going to play some testimony. Again, this is cross-examination, so it's intense. Let's watch.
A Bachelor of General Science in Mathematics and Business Administration does not exist as an offered degree at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, does it?
Sure, so that is an error. Clearly, BGS stands for Bachelors of General Studies, and that should have a with minor in Mathematics and Business Administration.
What is clear from that document that BGS stands for a Bachelor of General Studies? What is clear in that document about the definition of that acronym?
That is a known acronym.
Okay, little piece there of Shanon Burgess, cross-examined about his credentials. Dr. Morono, what are your thoughts, initial thoughts here about Shanon Burgess?
Well, his initial response was almost a deer in the headlights, but subtly. His brows instantly went up and his eyes widened, and there was a little almost frozen, as if he's just been caught out. So it was clear it was shock and cognitive overload, almost like a short panic moment.
Janine Driver, are you seeing that panic as well?
Yes, and I feel like he was prepared for this. Who says sure? Yeah, sure. That's also inaccurate. I mean, it's fascinating to me. I did a little research to prepare today. Vinnie, Scott Thompson, former Yahoo CEO, lied on his resume. MIT Dean of Admission, lie. George O'Leary, former Notre Dame football coach, lie on the resume. The list goes on and on. If we go back to Hurricane Katrina debacle, if we look at the head honcho there, he lied, right? So these resume lies, they'll catch up to us because we get promoted based on things that are supposed to be real when they're not. The fact that he is saying sure is interesting to me. And look at his movement on his lower part of his body. You don't see any. He is frozen. And I think sometimes people think liars are constantly moving. What we're looking for is a change in someone's normal behavior. Of course, we don't have that here. We don't have his normal behavior. But sometimes people, when they lie, they forget to breathe. There's not a lot of breathing happening. Look at, there's no chest breathing here. There's no movement from the shoulders on down. In my world, we have what's called integrated movement. And when we're telling the truth, our body naturally moves. My shoulders all the way down to my hips moves. It's called a PGM, posture, gesture, merger. We're not having this here. When Kevin Spacey was being charged and accused of doing stuff with some minors, Kevin Spacey, I remember watching an interview and he never moved at all. And I was like, ooh, he's holding something back. So when we have that frozen, keep in mind, fight, flight, freeze. There's a frozenness that's happening in his body and we're not seeing the movement. That is just as concerning when it comes to detecting deception and ferreting out the truth.
Okay, now we're going to get to the real meat of his testimony, some really important testimony here. But again, it's cross-examination. Let's watch.
In this May 8, 2025 report, you departed from your analysis in your January 2025 report to reach a conclusion that would attempt to put the 1162-2 text stream event after human interaction with Mr. O'Keefe's phone, correct?
No, I did not depart from my original report. I clarified.
Okay.
Okay. Dr. Morono, he's talking about clarifying. Obviously, he's being accused of something else, of changing his expert opinion. What are you seeing from Shanon Burgess on that witness stand?
Well, he went from the frozen to now fidgety. So there's been a change in his baseline. And you can see he's looking down. Now, a lot of the time that's a cultural display, but often we look down when we're in shame, almost as if we've been caught out for something, and he's looking down and he's shifting a little, and he's looking down and he's shifting a little. So that tells me that his nervous system is in dysregulation. And often we fidget when our nervous system is in dysregulation to try and regain some control and to calm down that nervous system activation. He's still relatively frozen in the lower body, but you can see there is definite discomfort here. And often when we're asked questions that we don't like, naturally our body would try and move away from them. If we think about it as our body's in flight mode, it's saying, get me out of this situation. We can't get up and run away. So our body tries to do the next best thing. It moves us away, and often that's where that fidgety behavior comes from.
All right, Janine Driver, we have about a minute here. I'll give you the final word on Shanon Burgess.
I've got the final word. Ditto. What the doctor just said. Bam! She's just hit the home run right here. We see this rocking a little bit as well. This is a comforting gesture, but definitely we see movement in the body now. The looking down, for me, I always say it's like a cell phone screensaver pops up. It's, I don't want you to see my private information, so I have to enter the code to get into your phone to see what you're holding back. So when we get these, I call them eye blocking. This eye blocking happens several times during this line of questioning, and that's suspicious. Again, it is a change from what we saw earlier, but do we really know which one is this baseline? We don't know. But for sure, this is someone who's exhibiting some signs of stress.
Yeah. I mean, it was very stressful because it's not just about the testimony. And when your credibility and your CV is attacked as an expert witness, it's your career that is on the line as well, potentially. Okay. Big thank you to Dr. Abby Morono. Great to have you on the program. I hope you come back again and again. Janine Driver's going to stick around. Up next, is Karen Reed showing any signs of deception? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the tragic death of Boston police officer John O'Keefe. A lot of this evidence in this case is witness testimony, and like in every trial, a lot of that testimony is being challenged. Here's the story. It was a snowy January night in Canton, Massachusetts, when the lives of Boston police officer John O'Keefe and his girlfriend Karen Reed collided with fate. The couple had been drinking, first at a bar, then continuing into the night. Tensions simmered beneath the surface as alcohol flowed freely. At some point that night, prosecutors allege Karen dropped John off at 34 Fairview Road, a home belonging to a fellow police officer. But John never made it inside. Hours later, his lifeless body was discovered in the snow-covered yard, battered and bruised, eyes swollen shut, cuts on his arm, and blood beneath his head. The storm had buried secrets and possibly evidence. Investigators turned to Karen Reed's SUV, pointing to a shattered tail light and forensic traces that allegedly matched John's injuries. They say the vehicle was the weapon, her recklessness the motive, but Karen insists she's being framed, the victim of a cover-up. What truly happened that icy night? That question now sits heavy in a courtroom as the jury must weigh the credibility of each witness to figure out what happened. So let's talk about Karen Reed. She's the defendant. She's the accused. She has the right to remain silent. She doesn't have to say anything. She doesn't have to testify. But during the prosecution case, the jury has already heard from her. That's because of the media interviews that she has done. The prosecution subpoenaed, and then the prosecution clipped selected pieces and portions of those interviews and have been playing them for the jury. Take a listen to this from a May 8th interview. This is not one of the clips inside the courtroom. This is Karen Reed speaking outside the courtroom.
Karen, there's a debate over the shoes. Do they match from the picture to what John was wearing?
Just look at the evidence, look at the pictures. I didn't collect them. I've seen that, though.
Do you think
did you see
John go in the house?
I did.
You saw him go in the house?
I saw John go in the house.
Can you describe him going into the house? Which door and how and when?
No, I have, though, and I'm sure the prosecution will play it.
Do you think Proctor will testify, Karen?
I don't believe so, but you've seen this afternoon how much evidence has not been shown to this jury. And we've had to work really hard, Alan's had to work really hard to organize it so that they can be presented with the actual evidence in this case.
It's interesting the way this has developed because the lawyers are gagged, so Karen Reed really is the only one who can speak, and she has been speaking a lot. There are selected days where she doesn't talk, but again, this was one of them where she spoke a lot outside of the courthouse. But going back to those clips inside the courtroom that the jury is seeing, they are so important in this case because the jury's hearing from the defendant herself. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is Karen Read showing any signs of deception? Karen Read, the defendant, the accused killer. Helping us answer this question, body language expert Janine Driver and Tiffany Lee, who is also a body language expert. Great to have you both here. The rules are simple. I will roll some more video of Karen Read, some of the video that the jury has seen. These are clips from interviews with members of the media, not me, but from other organizations where she's telling her story. Let's take a look at the first one.
At 12:41, I leave a voicemail to John where you can clearly, and this will probably be played on Monday, you can clearly hear me pull into John's garage. You can hear my car sensors beeping as I come close to the sides of the garage door. Beep, 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 beep. And then you hear the car go off, and then you hear the sled ding, ding, ding as I open the door, shut the door. I had high heels on that night. You hear me walk in, go in through the stairs up into the kitchen, shut the door, and you hear me walk into the kitchen. It's like a full minute long. That's at 12:41.
Okay, Janine Driver, the jury is getting a lot of these clips. What are you seeing from her as she is speaking here, describing what she says happened that night when she got back to John O'Keefe's house?
Yeah, Karen Read, thanks, Vinnie. Karen Read is using what it was called illustrators. The illustrators are hand gestures that match the story. And she's giving us, of course, the sound effects as well. And she's showing us with her hands where she's going. And she went up the stairs. This is indicative of someone telling the truth. When we had Jussie Smollett lying about a staged hate crime over in Chicago, and he's talking about being attacked and hey, MAGA, or whatever the hat he said they were wearing, he doesn't turn around and say, hey, this guy called my name. There were no movements like this, illustrators. We see them with Karen Read. I've weighed in on this footage before. I've looked at all of her interviews on television, and I believe Karen Read is telling the truth. She did not, in my expert opinion, and what I've weighed in on, I don't think she killed her boyfriend, John.
Tiffany Lee, what are you seeing from Karen Read here?
For sure. I'm seeing a lot of the things that Janine mentioned, but one thing that I am seeing that makes me pause for a second, that she's able to describe every single moment in extreme detail. That raises a cue for suspicion for me, because normally in a moment of trauma or something like that, you may not remember every single thing. And the fact that she can lay out, I did this first, I did that. You can hear the beep. She can illustrate and demonstrate the beep. That's kind of suspicious to me because, like I said, a lot of times you don't remember every single detail in order exactly as it happened during a traumatic experience.
Okay, let's take a listen to another clip of Karen Read giving an interview. The jury has seen this. Let's watch.
I do. I mean, I'll tell you.
Tell me, use that.
I'll tell you, John and I argued the morning of the 28th, Friday morning. So he died, we think he died right around 12:25, 12:30 on the early morning of January 29th.
Okay, Janine, how about here?
These are what she's doing. She's touching her face here, and this is called a pacifier. Pacifier is anytime we touch our body with one piece of our body to another. And so this is a high-level pacifier. The closer we get to our brain, the higher in stress and anxiety. It's a spike here. Of course, it makes sense. She's talking about when her boyfriend is, most likely died in that moment. She's scratching her face and rubbing her chin. When we grab our chin, I say we're about to win. When we grab our chin, we look intelligent. It's called the thinking person's pose. However, it's also still a pacifier. It is a spike in stress and anxiety. What I like here is she's taking a second to think about it and process the information. I still don't see this as a sign of deception because her eyes and her answers are congruent despite having that high stress pacifier.
Tiffany Lee, your thoughts here?
Very similar to Janine. She had everything perfectly. This clip is very different from the first one. We're seeing that slowing down of her talking. We're seeing her hitting and rubbing the chin. We're seeing her doing that pacifier where she's grabbing around her stomach. She's kind of holding herself to comfort herself. We're seeing even a little bit of emotion here, just in the way that she's thinking and trying to recollect the memory. So this one is much different than the first clip that we saw.
All right, we have one more that I want to show you. Again, Karen Reed being interviewed by the media, clips that the prosecution believe help them. Let's watch.
I mean, I didn't think I hit him, but could I have clipped him? Could I have tagged him in the knee and incapacitated him? He didn't look mortally wounded as far as I could see, but could I have done something that knocked him out and in drunkenness and in the cold didn't come to again?
And this would have been the moment you dropped him off at the party.
Yeah, would have had to.
Okay, this one I think prosecutors believe is really good for them. This is one that the prosecutor used in his opening statement. Tiffany Lee, I'll begin with you on this one. What are you seeing from Karen Reed?
I'm seeing a lot more animation. Before she was kind of more so still in this box. Now she's moving around. She's talking about things. You can see the emotions coming up. You can see her really thinking about the answers and how she's going to respond. But one thing I do notice here, that her voice goes up slightly. So that sometimes could be an indicator of either high emotion or maybe you're holding something back. But that's just the first time that I've heard her voice and the tone of her voice go up slightly.
Janine, how about this part of Karen Reed's interview?
Vinny, this is my you gotta be kidding me face, okay? I'm bringing it to the show tonight. You gotta be kidding me. Who is gonna lie about murder and then do an interview on a television show walking through, hey, I asked myself, could it have done this? Could I have done that? Could I have done that? She would be the world's worst murderer to then say this information. The fact that she's saying this makes me believe her more that she's telling the truth. Listen, I wrote a book, You Can't Lie to Me, right? Used to say, you can't lie to me when you would promote it. So listen to this. One of the tells is when I say, who could have done this, Vinny? And someone says, Tiffany could have did it, Vinny could have did it, he had access to the room, they could have committed the crime. And the person doesn't include themselves, they're more likely to be withholding information. The truthful person will say, hey, Tiffany had access to the information, Vinny had access to the information, you know what? I had access to the information. All three of us could have done it. It wasn't me. But we're going to throw me into the mix because I'm being honest, who has access to potentially of doing this. This makes no sense. When did O.J. Simpson come out and do TV interviews? I mean, he wrote a book and they pulled it, right? Had I done it? But we see Karen and listen to her talking here. This makes no sense for them to think this is their smoking gun, the prosecuting attorney. I don't know. I would hope that the jury is smart enough to know if, in fact, she killed John, she's not going to be going and saying this on a television show. It makes me believe even more so that Karen Reed is innocent, and I believe she's being framed. I mean, if you watched all of the evidence, come on. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure this out.
Our guests are staying with us when we come back. Is Daniel Wolfe, this is there's three Wolfes in this case, but is Daniel Wolfe from ARCA showing any signs of deception?
Do you feel like you're an advocate for the defense?
No, sir.
You sure about that?
Sir, I'm on the science and in the analysis that I've done.
We want to understand the mindset behind your actions in this case.
I'm going to give you a news scoop.
What happened?
I did it.
Very funny, really. I'm laughing. You see me, I laugh. I don't want any of this. You think you should get some kind of credit for not killing people?
Not at all, no.
You are a shrewd operator.
Interview with a Killer. Memorial Day Marathon. Starting Monday, 11:10 Central. Only on Court TV.
As I just discussed with you, from what I recall, it was relaying to him the clarification that I got from the Department of Justice.
Right, but that doesn't take more than one call, does it?
I don't know. He may have been in court. There might have been some phone tag. I don't know, sir.
That's Daniel Wolfe. He's an expert for the defense in this trial. He was a witness for them in the first trial. but now he's an official expert for the defense, an accident reconstructionist. Crucial witness for the defense. Could be make it or break it for Karen Read. So his credibility, incredibly important. Take a look.
Do you feel like you're an advocate for the defense?
No, sir.
Are you sure about that?
Sir, I'm on the science and the analysis that I've done. That's the side that I'm on.
Now, at some point, did the defense send you a retainer agreement?
For this year?
Nope. Prior to the end of the last trial, did you ever get a retainer agreement?
No, there was no contract and retainer for the first
There wasn't a contract. Did you ever receive a retainer agreement?
No, I don't believe so.
So there was a lot of drama and litigation outside the presence of the jury so far in this case involving Daniel Wolfe, ARCA, and the defense, and Alan Jackson. But he's going to be an important witness during the defense case, and he did testify. Again, that's not in front of the jury, but it was important testimony when this issue came up about his credibility. So all of that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Is Daniel Wolfe showing any signs of deception? Daniel Wolfe, one of the ARCA experts. Here to help our investigation, Janine Driver and Tiffany Lee, both great body language experts. All right, now again, this guy could be the most important witness for the defense. Let's watch.
I want to talk about back in April. Do you remember having conversations on April 24th?
Objection, Your Honor.
With Mr. Jackson? Do you remember that?
I'm going to allow that.
I remember that there were conversations, yes. Specifically what they were to. I remember, I think they were brief, but I don't remember the specifics of them, no.
Well, in the brief conversation, what do you briefly remember about that brief conversation, Doctor?
Well, as I mentioned, I think I had finally received clarification from the DOJ, so I think I was letting him know that I had received that clarification.
Well, sir, you said that was the first call. There were more than one call. There was then 2 calls to the main line. What did you discuss with him during those calls?
Well, to be honest with you, the call to the ARCA main line, I don't even know if I spoke with him. That's just to the main line, not to me directly. So he could have spoken to a receptionist who then tried to get a hold of me, right? So I don't know if that specific call to the main line was to me or someone else at ARCA.
Okay. A lot going on here. This is very contentious. A lot of sarcasm coming from the questions. Tiffany Lee, what are you seeing and hearing here?
I'm saying he is being extremely matter of fact. I mean, out of all the testimonies we've seen and clips we've seen, this one, it strikes me as the most truthful. He is a matter of fact. We do see him do a little tongue protrusion and a little lip withdrawal there, which could be a sign of not liking what he's seeing or hearing, or he could just be tired of talking about it. But he is showing me signs of truth because he's not trying to convince. He's not trying to over-articulate. It's a question. He answers it. He's done. That's it. These are signs of truth to me.
Janine, what are you seeing and hearing from Daniel Wolfe?
Okay, first of all, I love you, Tiffany. And I would like to add, he is a little smug for me. This smile that he has on, it's called duping delight, and it comes up. It doesn't belong there. We saw this with Roger Goodell when Roger Goodell was saying he never saw the Ray Rice footage. I never actually saw the video, and that's why we only suspended him for a couple days. And he would have that little grin. It's not going to serve him well with credibility from the jury. Also, he says the words "well" and "to be honest with you." When someone says "well," I call that the fishing well, right? It's like the fishing well. Well, I feel like they're skipping a lot of information right there. And then "to be honest with you." When someone says to me, "to be honest with you," what it indicates to me is I'm kind of assuming you're honest on every front. And well, to be honest with you, I didn't really remember that. Like, it's just unnecessary. You could just simply say, I don't remember that part. When someone adds that expression, "to be honest with you," it's a hot spot for me to pay closer attention. And it's language that is simply unnecessary. We're assuming everything you're saying is the truth. If something is being said that you disagree with, just say that's inaccurate. What really happened is this. And I think it hurts him. I think the fishing well and the smirk and the "to be honest with you," I don't know if that's going to serve him well here.
Okay, another contentious part of the testimony here. asking him about deleting text messages. Let's watch.
Do you remember sitting down and deciding intentionally you were going to delete over 100 texts? Where did that decision happen?
I have no idea, sir.
You can't remember deleting over 100 texts where you were?
I just said I delete text routinely. You're asking me to specifically give you a location and a time when I deleted those? I don't recall that.
Okay, Tiffany.
This guy, oh man. So we're definitely seeing that smile and that smirk here. But what you're starting to see here is now he's getting super defensive. And then he takes that sip of water. Immediately, mouth is getting dry. Let me get myself together. So he's really showing some signs of, I'm irritated. I may be done talking about this. And I may not be being totally truthful either. So this guy is interesting. That could be his personality, is just smug, like we talked about earlier. But that laugh and that sip of water right when that question was asked, I don't know. Something seems off.
Okay,
watch out, Vinny.
Janine, what do you think?
I said this earlier, is when we see the tongue protrusion, which we saw a couple times here, they could be getting some type of enjoyment from, pleasure from manipulating us or withholding information. Listen, if you're deleting 100 text messages or emails or whatever regarding a criminal murder case, I'm going to say you're probably going to remember it, right? It's not the everyday, I'm deleting all the stuff that comes in from newsletters I've signed up for, or I belong to a meetup group and I'm getting all these announcements of events coming in. This is very significant, and this smug smile, it doesn't belong here. It reminds me of Amber Heard a little bit when we're talking about something incredibly serious and you have that smug look on your face. It's not great. It's not great. It's not serving him well. And I think he comes across as not likable. But hey, guess what? Vinny, you had me on talking about, remember Gwyneth Paltrow? We had her on. Some guy sued her about a ski accident. And I didn't find Gwyneth Paltrow likable either. And I believe that she was telling the truth. So someone doesn't have to be considered likable to still be telling the truth.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting the Amber Heard Daniel Wolfe comparison, I'll be honest. To be honest with you, I wasn't expecting that, but interesting because we know the way that one ended for Amber Heard. I want to say a big thank you to Janine Driver, host of The Driver's Seat with Janine Driver, and Tiffany Lee. Great to have you both here. Your insight is so valuable, and we thank you. Credibility is huge. In this case, it is a vital issue for both sides. Prosecutors need the jury to believe law enforcement and the experts that they've hired. But if the jury believes that they're being deceptive, it's game over. Karen Reed walks. The question is, does the jury believe what they're hearing and trust the people who are testifying? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for the answers. I need this. As the investigation continues.